to the Weekly Bioanalysis, a KCAS podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 60th episode of the Weekly Bioanalysis, the official podcast of KCAS, Bioanalytical and Biomarker Services. KCAS is a bioanalytical CRO serving the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical industries for over 40 years. My name is John Perkins and I've been in the bioanalytical LCMS space for 27 years. I'm here with my co-host, John Pirro.
Yes, hello, I'm John Pirro. I've been in the biological space and also the CRO environment for over 20 years.
John and I are senior scientific advisors at KCAS. Either or both of us are available to answer any questions you may have regarding this podcast or any of KCAS's services. Today we're here with a couple of special guests, Beth Lafreniere, Director of Lab Support Services, and Tang Nguyen, Manager of Clinical Sample Kitting at KCAS. I'm located in upstate New York. John, Beth, and Tang are in Kansas, and our producer is in Missouri, so we're all over the map. We're thrilled to have you listening to the 60th episode of the podcast, which is now available virtually everywhere. Wherever you choose to find and play your podcast, you can now likely find the Weekly Bioanalysis. We welcome all of you, whether you are joining us for the first time or if you're a regular listener. Today's podcast will be a review of the latest news and resources, and then a focus on a topic of our choosing before discussing any feedback we've had from you. We're constantly looking for topics, and we'd be happy to discuss something that you want us to cover. So again, we're fired up to have you here, and we're looking forward to having a fun episode today. To kick us off for podcast number 60, John is going to go over today's podcast topic a bit before we jump into the news and resources section. John.
Okay, we're going to go over some of the latest COVID news that came in, as well as some of the non-COVID news that are very exciting and interesting to us that we want to let you guys all know that we're keeping our hands on. Then we're also going to go into our sample kitting, where Beth and Tang are going to be discussing. We'll ask them questions, and we'll go on from there. John?
So let's get started on the news, and we'll go with the COVID topics as usual. First of all, a long COVID collaborative kicks off with $50 million to study causes of lingering disease, conduct clinical trials. Basically, I thought this was worth talking about because, vaccines, etc., obviously helped bring things somewhat under control with COVID, but long COVID has been an issue for a significant portion of the population, and there isn't really much emphasis within pharma to try and address that. So I think this is a collaboration to really sort of try and understand what's going on with long COVID, and then long term is what the factors that drive chronic disease for this subset of the population, and then long term what medications can possibly be developed to try and address this, and obviously help people get their lives back, because obviously for some, when you read several cases in the media, some people have it's really been significantly life changing for them.
Yeah, I agree with that, John, because you really don't know how much it affects the immune system and what effects it could have on cognitive function, because that's what a lot of people are finding, and nerve signaling and other processes are being affected as well. And I think it's time to start analyzing these long COVID research effects going forward. And neuroinflammation and how the virus affects the microbiome and other pathogens is also very important. And this is a very good start to that type of functionality, don't you think?
Sure. So they're called the Long COVID Research Initiative, and they're bringing together infectious disease experts from Harvard, Stanford, UCSF, the Craig Venter Institute, Johns Hopkins, University of Pennsylvania, Mount Sinai, Cardiff, and Yale. And leading it will be Amy Proal, a microbiologist with research focused on infection-associated chronic fatigue syndrome. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what comes out of this. There are two billionaires, I think, pushing the funding. Vitalik Buterin, who's co-founder of Ethereum, and Patrick Soon-Shiong, who's a LA Times owner.
Yeah.
And so, like I say, there's not much out there, but there is some focus amongst biotechs. But this is obviously one of the next areas to focus on to really sort of try and put COVID in our rearview mirror.
Yeah, and the rearview mirror is what we needed to do, especially when it's coming up again and other, shall we say, variances going forward. We need to understand how this moves.
Well, I mean, they certainly. I think the UK said they saw last week an uptick of 48% of cases.
Yep,
My
yep.
my younger sister finally caught it for the first time last week. So yeah, it's still out there. It's still affecting people. And I went for a shot on Friday to have my second booster, and basically lost Saturday because of it. um, but it's I was going to do whatever I can to make sure that I suffer any don't really suffer any of the debilitating effects. I want to make sure I'm insulated against it.
Yeah, it's like the chicken pox. You get the chicken pox with kids. You try to get it back in the older days. You try to expose your kids to get it over with when they were young and stuff. But now we understand that there is another effect of this virus that could affect later on in life, causing all these different lesions and stuff like that going forward. So it's important we indulge in this, and I'm very happy that they're starting to do that.
Sure. So let's move on to the next topic. And there's a couple more COVID things, but it's actually more looking to the long term. And this one is, can a special chewing gum slick away COVID-19 from saliva?
There you go. Wrigley's are big red, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the funny thing is, Penn researchers start clinical trial to find out. So
Ah.
basically, as researchers from University of Pennsylvania began a small clinical trial to test whether cinnamon flavored gum, no, not Wrigley's Big Red, could reduce of COVID-19 in saliva, a potential way to cut out transmission of the virus. So it's a group at Penn School of Dental Medicine led by Henry Daniell. It's made from lettuce plant cells that are altered to express ACE2, which is the receptor that COVID binds to.
Ah.
So to actually enable the gum to trap the viral particles, and and hopefully expel it from the body that way. They they've used this before. They used it to test for flu to do a similar sort of thing,
Mhm.
but this is the first time they're doing it for COVID. And yeah, they also previously created a chewing gum that contained enzymes that could break down plaque buildup on teeth. It's a really interesting approach. I have to say I completely disagree with their approach using cinnamon, because it's a flavour I loathe with a passion. And I mean, if it was spearmint, I'd be totally up for it. But cinnamon gum, nah, I'm going to take COVID rather than that.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
agree.
it's just I really like the way these little bits of research pop up all over the place, and it's coming at it from a completely alternative point of view, but you can see the value of what they're looking to do. So they actually start a phase 1-2 trial with 40 employees from Penn who have COVID-19 but aren't getting any antivirals or hospital care. The employees will have to chew the gum for 10 minutes 4 times every day for 3 days, collect multiple samples over the course of the trial period, really to see what the viral load is and whether the chewing gum is doing its job. And then one of the important downstream effects of that is, if it does manage to clean out the virus, is how long does it take before the virus comes back? Because
Yeah,
no one really
that's
actually knows. No one really knows how long it takes from zero to rebuild the virus. So there's some interesting questions that this trial is attempting to answer, and I'll pass it back to you.
No. I think it's a very good approach because saliva, a lot of people don't realize that this is where a lot of contamination occurs. Saliva is a very good matrix, shall we say,
Yep.
for looking at all these different things for contamination, spreading a viral disease, and how it communicates and how it spreads in the population. So this is, I think, is a good way. Chewing gum is not a problem. I have to agree with you though, John. Cinnamon is not my favorite flavor anyway is, but I think this is a great way, and how long it will last is very important, because if you stop chewing the gum 10 minutes, half hour later, oh, you're right back up to where you need to be for that saliva thing. But we'll see what happens. I think it's a very important type of situation. I'm very excited about it as well.
Yeah, I referred to cinnamon as the devil's spice a short while ago, and I will fight that battle to the end. Um, so I've got nothing more to add to that. Let's move on to the next one, and this is another. This is a Norwegian company called Nykode Therapeutics, based in Oslo, who they've hit early stage goals for pan-variant COVID shot. So their approach for a vaccine, rather than just go at the spike protein, is actually to have it address the portions of the virus that isn't changing with time. So their approach is if they can develop a vaccine that shows success with that, then you won't need to go for the regular updates because the mutations are occurring at points of the virus away from where their vaccine is really is showing effect, or where it's designed to obviously to attach to the virus. They've hit their main goals in a phase 1/2 trial, which was basically looking at safety, and then now it's looking at what can it do in terms of effectiveness going forward.
So they're not going to be they're not attacking just the spike protein. They're going into the actual virus and doing something else inside the virus that'll prevent it from going over. And the immunity response of the human is going to take the spike effect as well as the internal material that's going to be important. Because if you look at the science, the spike protein, which can be subject to high immune selection and pressure and mutation frequency, is high, and that's why you need boosters. And every year, just like with regular viruses, you need to get the viral change every single year because those things mutate and change. And it doesn't. I take it doesn't focus solely on the spike protein, correct?
So I'm gonna pick up on this because I think I misrepresented it. So the vaccine called VB10-2210
Yep.
was delivered in a collaboration with Adaptive Biotechnologies for COVID T cell vaccine development.
Okay.
It's designed to prime T cells using Nykode's Vaccibody technology platform,
Mm,
combined with 96 immunogenic T cell epitopes, both spike and non-spike, that were
good.
selected by adaptive biotechnologies. The aim is to develop a vaccine that maintains efficacy regardless of future spike mutations and wouldn't need to be updated for future emerging variants. So
Beautiful.
it's like a very, very different approach.
Yep.
But like I say, it's that rather than, I mean, obviously we talked about it earlier on. I mean, I've had my fourth shot. I'll go back for them if that's what the recommendation is, but I would quite happily not have to keep going back. So if the Nycode one has legs, that would obviously be a great alternative for people because there's so many people don't like shots.
Right. Yeah.
I remember in the early days when I knew people who said I went for the Janssen vaccine because it was only one shot rather than the two, and I don't like needles, so I'll just go for the one shot and hope that does. Hopefully that works, so it does factor into people's decision making.
Yes, it does. That's a great potential there. And I think if they come up with something that actually does that, it's going to help not just only for COVID, but other viral vectors as well, like flu and stuff like that. So this is great. I think it's a good start.
Yes, exactly. I think they just did, according to the article, they just need funding to really help drive this forward. But
Everybody needs funding.
yeah, hopefully they can find someone to team up with and make that work.
Yep.
So let's move on to the non-COVID topics. And this is one: chronic pain pathway linked to lung cancer. Scientists have uncovered a link between chronic pain and lung cancer, a link that also offers potentially druggable pathway for both conditions, according to new research conducted in mouse models. This was done at Harvard, Boston Children's Hospital, and the Austrian Academy of Sciences Institute of Molecular Biotechnology. And this was really looking at addiction tied to opioids, and so trying to find non-opioids. And they discovered that sensory neurons produce a metabolite known as BH4 that drives chronic pain. Higher concentrations of BH4 tied to increased pain sensitivity and persistence. And so they looked at what could they do about targeting the BH4 pathway. Looked at a bunch of small molecules, including clonidine, that could address BH4. But then in doing that, they actually found a link between the BH4 pathway and the EGFR KRAS signaling pathway involved in multiple cancers.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes. Sorry, they were by blocking EGFR KRS signaling decreased pain sensitivity by reducing BH4 levels, according to new findings. And then the EGFR KRAS signaling also increased expression of GCH1, an important enzyme in that BH4 pathway that contributes to neuropathic pain. So it turned out blocking EGFR blocked GCH1 and was tied to pain relief. So I'll pass it back to you to give your thoughts.
Yeah, so that's the same triggers that drive tumor growth appear also to be involved in setting the path to chronic pain, often experienced by cancer patients. This is interesting because we also know that the sensory nerves can drive cancer, which could explain the vicious circuit of cancer and pain.
Sure. Yep.
Interesting. And so Joseph Penninger, the IMBA group leader and founder and director, in a press release said, understanding the crosstalk is therefore not only critical for cancer treatments, but might also help to improve the quality of life for cancer patients towards less pain, which is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's one of these PCs again. It's early research, but it could have profound implications going forward. So I thought this was a really nice thing to touch on.
Yeah. And I would like to move on to the next one because this is a very, very important point because a lot of these breast cancers, because I think there's coming up with a new liquid biopsy to detect signs of breast cancer in early stage patients. A USC led team of scientists found indications that a special blood test called a liquid biopsy could determine whether a patient has breast cancer at its early stage and if the cancer is unlikely to return. The liquid biopsies are conducted using a standard blood draw from the arm of the patient in the doctor's office. And once in a laboratory, the sample is examined for signs of cancers. Now, this is going to be in Nature's NPJ Breast Cancer Journal, and the work as a collaboration between USC, Billings Clinic, Duke University, Epic Science, and USC Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center. The results raise hopes that one day doctors could detect breast cancer in patients with a sample blood draw. Now, why is this important? Well, they're eager to test to see whether the results will be proven in larger clinical trials to demonstrate the benefit of the method for patients everywhere. Because we have mammograms, x-rays, tissue biopsies, all are painful. And since 1976, the American Cancer Society has endorsed these techniques, and they're not 100% accurate in its detection and can be impeded by healthy dense tissue for mammography. Sensitivity to breast cancer is around 87%, according to breast cancer surveillance. And some women, their mammograms are not accessible; they can't get to them, and others simply do not get regular mammograms. A tissue biopsy also is not a foolproof method, although it can reveal information about the tumor. It has limitations, and doctors' samples can only a small area and may fail to capture the area full extent of the tissue biopsies. But what this new technique is looking for is what we call oncosomes. Now, oncosomes are nano-sized membrane cargo carriers that enrich the body's environment for cancer growth. These oncosomes are secreted by cancer cells, as the group has shown previously. The news here is that we found the vast majority of early stage breast cancer patients have these oncosomes at very robust levels. The dean said Khan, the dean professor at the USC Dornsife College of Letters, Arts and Sciences, and cancer physicists. They're about 5 to 10 microns in diameter, about the size of a cell. We first identified these large vesicles in prostate cancer, which is interesting, about a year and a half ago, and showed that they are related to the cancer and they're hiding in plain sight. Now, they're taking about 100 breast cancer patients and 40 patients without breast cancers to test this. And they've been doing this since April of 2013 through January 2017. So they're coming up with the data pretty quickly here, and it's looking very good. John, you want to just add something to that?
Well, I mean, there's obviously the big piece of that is taking the. If you can do this based on a blood draw, that's a huge
Yeah.
for everyone. I mean, it's easier on the patients. I mean, liquid is going to be easier to deal with for the person doing the checking, etc. Do you know what technology you would use to detect these oncosomes? Because that obviously I'm not familiar with how you would do that. But it's not made clear as to how they're detecting them, but just the ease on the patients is a big deal. And if it can obviously if it can provide accuracy similar to or better than the mammogram slash biopsy approach, then it's a better way to go.
Yes,
And
I agree.
obviously for patients, the earlier the better.
Yep, yep.
Because the quicker you can intervene and prevent further downstream treatment is huge for obviously for patients' quality of life. Because I mean, although we're there's so much focus in the pharma industry on cancer medications, etc., they can
Yes, yeah.
be nasty in terms of side effects. So if you can get caught early enough that we can surgically intervene to prevent any radiation therapy or chemotherapy, that's a good thing. So I mean, honest, if this shows legs, this would be a fantastic step forward for people, and hopefully, well, again, it's one of those things with research. It's indicating a path forward. So they is one of those. That's the nice thing about research is how teams build on each other. So
Right,
even if they
right.
run into a block, there may be someone else who sees it and says, but that sets off something in my mind, and I can get it going from there. And I'm sure it will be. What it shows is there's a path here.
Yes, yes.
That sometime. Who knows how long it will take, but that actually blood-based detection of breast cancer will be a reality, and like say, much easier on patients, which I'm all in favour of. So yeah, it's a great thing to read about. So move on to the final news item for today, and this is drug grows axons in mice with severe pinal. Sorry, God, I wish I could speak. Drug grows axons in mice with severe spinal cord injuries. This is, and again, this is, I mean, it's mice, so it's way out there in terms of how it might affect us. But it is very, again, it's just fascinating what people are doing. This is a group. So background is if you've got minor or moderate spinal cord injuries, you can do some sort of healing with physical therapy, etc. But for most severe cases, there's nothing we can do.
Hmm.
And the biggest issue is in reconnecting axon fibers, which are sections of the nerve cells that carry signals from the brain along the spinal cord below and above the injury site. There's no way of regenerating axon fibers, so it's like, what's your alternative approach to do that? Um, and parts of the cell that would normally promote growth, called the growth cones, collapse if the fiber is damaged. So that's the issue here. Um, so there's a group of scientists from Imperial College London were looking at what they could do to possibly stimulate growth, or axon fiber growth, and they found a small molecule. So it's not all about large molecules on this podcast. Occasionally, small molecules creep in here. It's a small molecule epigenetic activator called TTK21. They're able to improve several dimensions of spinal axon growth in mice with severe SCI. Now, this is incredibly early stuff. They've stimulated the growth, but the mice, they didn't actually improve function of the mice. They have worked with the same small molecule, and for less injured mice, were actually able to improve the traction of the mice with just a small molecule. So for them, it's showing potential path forward. Like I said, what research is all about. But it's the small molecule might not be enough. It's then the question, what can we combine it with? That if we use the small molecule to promote axon growth, what else can be done to then help the regain function? So it's a very, very out there piece of research, but I think potential is fascinating here, and I thought it was worth throwing out there for a quick discussion.
No, it's getting to the point where obviously axons grow towards the functionality. That's why we, at young age, we learn to walk. We did those axons are now connecting with certain muscle fibers to do that type of thing. When it's broken like this, okay, and they're trying to get this to grow, they're doing fantastic things and getting the fibers to grow back. And I think if they start adding some of these other types of functionalities where they actually get cell grafts and stuff like that, biomaterials to mix along with the TTK21, and then have the person relearn how to connect that communication of these newly grown fibers to these muscle functions will be able to get those people. It's a lot of work. This is fantastic, John. This is really exciting. I think this is very important, and I'm very happy to hear that we're making small steps going in that direction.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's all fascinating when you monitor the news on the weekly basis. These little
Yeah,
snippets
yeah.
that you think you see the potential of medical research and where it's taken us, and yeah, it really is incredible what
It's
what people are out there doing.
it's amazing. It's amazing.
So that's the end of the news piece. So let's now move on to the main portion of the podcast, and we're really pleased to have a couple of guests. So we're going to talk this week about clinical sample kitting, where the personal touch drives study success. And we have two guests. We have Beth Lafreniere and Tang Nguyen. Um, let's at least start with give a chance for both of you to introduce yourselves, talk about your role, and then we'll talk about how clinical sample kitting works at KCS and the function of it within the wider organisation and how it contributes to the success of the company.
Sure, John. Thanks. This is Beth. I'm the Director of Laboratory Support Services here at KCAS, and one of my responsibilities is overseeing our clinical sample kits department. I've been here since January, been in the CRO industry for about 13 years, and really excited to see the growth and opportunity in this area.
Thank you, Beth. Tang, how are you?
I'm good. My name is Tang Nguyen. I'm the clinical sample kits manager here at KCAS. I've been here with KCS for about 5 years. My primary role is, just talk to clients and gather information about their studies and uh, provide. Our team provides the kits for that study and just to meet client deadlines.
Okay,
So, sorry, go ahead, John.
yeah, so explain to us, Beth or Tang, why this clinical sampling kit is becoming more and more important for our clients when they move into the clinical studies.
So clinical kits are a very important piece of a study. They determine, or sorry, they form the bridge between the clinic and the analytic laboratory, whether that's KCAS or another laboratory. So having a robust kit in place, having a good instruction and a good build in that kit is vital to making sure that the right samples get to the right labs in the right conditions at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, certainly as a bioanalytical lab, or having dealt with a number of different suppliers, um, the standard of labeling and just the instructions and how things are set up really are fundamental to the success of the bioanalytical piece. And if CS if the clinical sample kitting is done right, the labeling is right, the bioanalytical is done right, that then feeds back to the client company and it's done right, and it really is success for the data. Otherwise you can be scrambling to try and figure out are the samples actually, have we got the right samples. You can be much more secure in how the data that we feed back to the customer.
Absolutely. The kits provide can be a huge benefit or they can be a huge bottleneck. Poorly made kits or difficult to understand kits are not only difficult to use on the clinical end, where they're using those kits to collect and provide those samples to the laboratory. Then when they get to us and they get into the hands of our sample management groups or our analysis groups, the easier that sample is to tie to that piece of data. At the end of the day, that's faster and more robust data.
So let's talk about your group. You talked about the bridge between obviously the clinic and all the downstream labs who are providing services. What are the core services that you would describe that your group provides?
Tang?
Well, our group provides, all the kits for all phases for phase 1, 2, and 3. Um, we do customized manuals. We always try to put ourselves in the clinical sites' shoes, like Beth mentioned. The best way to for a successful study is for precise and accurate instructions. So, um, so that's how we do our we do customizations on our kits and just make sure that everything's in place and make it as simple as possible.
So you would actually work with the client as well as the clinical site to get these kits to the right level and also label them correctly so the bioanalysis part of the system and process would work a lot faster, or shall we say not faster, more efficiently going forward. Is that correct?
Correct. We work with the clients one on one, or who of a group of their team to provide an instruction manual or collection manual to ensure that everything they need is within that manual to provide to the sites.
Wow, that would be great for international. Have you done a lot of international kit setting for clients and clinical sites overseas?
We've gone to overseas. We've been to Europe, Thailand, South America, pretty much all over the world. We do work with clients as they we to when they provide a study within the country, uh, they we work with the client to provide the kits within that country.
Okay, so what? Let me ask you a question because this is very important. What's the personalized touch that sets KCS apart from everybody else? Beth or Tang?
KCAS likes to provide concierge service at every single point in contact with our studies, whether it's someone that we're working with just for that clinical kitting, or if it's a client that we're creating the kits and then also doing the analysis, potentially doing central lab with our depot services. We have a one-on-one relationship where we're working with a small team. They're very good at what they do. They know the industry, they know the suppliers, they know the business. Everybody on this team is very, very responsive. We like to work, like I said, one on one with our clients, and then we're available for follow ups from the clinic as well. We do, we even have that on our sample management side where things are coming back to us. We have quite a bit of depth in those departments where we can provide that concierge service from the start all the way through the end.
Wow.
Do you ever like go to visit sites to help with if there's any issues or things like that? I mean, is that part of the personalized piece?
It absolutely can be. Obviously, it hasn't been lately.
Sure,
COVID's
understood.
kind of shut those things down. But yes, that is 100% a service that we're happy to provide.
Yeah, I realised the question was I was asking a question that somewhat referred to history because COVID, like you say, has really changed how stuff is done. But it's also, I mean, it's like assuming that we get back to the somewhat normality. That's still something that we would obviously consider as one of our selling points.
Most definitely. And we're positioned to do that now. We've gotten creative over the past couple of years. Everybody knows Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, whatever that needs to look like, PowerPoint presentations. But yeah, that one-on-one, hands-on, in person is obviously a better way to go whenever we can. So that's a service that we're happy to provide.
Obviously, since COVID, we haven't had too many go on site since then, but we have done a couple studies where we've provided a PowerPoint collection instruction and walk through the instructions with the sites.
Hmm. So what? I mean, you mentioned phase one, phase two, phase three. What type of studies do you think is your sweet spot in terms of support by the clinical sample kitting team?
Okay.
Um, I mean, there's no study that we say that. I mean, we're so wide in like what we do that there's no specific area that we're specific to. Pretty much anything that the clients would request. If it's out there, we can go get it.
I think rather than a specific study type for a sweet spot is just kind of a client type. We really
Mhm.
enjoy working with our smaller pharma, our smaller CROs that maybe are waiting in line with a bigger supplier or aren't getting the kind of responsiveness they need, especially if it's a smaller study. Some of those smaller studies, you know, if it's not highly profitable, they might get put to the back of the line. You're going to hear a lot about supply issues and personnel issues, and we just don't have that. We really like to work with everybody, and we see the benefit, and it's part of our overall, our philosophy is to move these things forward. A big study is important, a small study is important. So we really like to work with clients and sponsors who maybe have had issues with bigger companies in the past.
So the supply chain issue is not bothering you. As a matter of fact, it's one of our benefits, correct?
I wouldn't say the supply chain isn't bothering us. We would love to say it's not, but no, we've got quite a bit of experience. We have years of experience in this area where we've got a depth of suppliers. We don't have any one supplier that we insist on working with. So if it's something that's difficult to source, we will scour the market and find what needs to be found. We haven't to date had to simply say no, we can't get that. We work
That's
very,
good.
very hard to supply all these
Yeah,
studies.
we have multiple vendors that we go through for every study. We always ask clients what they need up front, and then from there, even if they haven't signed yet, we just kind of poke at our vendors and say, "Hey, what's the timelines for a certain item?" And we just try to stay ahead of everything. That way, we can meet all the deadlines that the client requests.
So, I mean, what kind of obviously, like say, the supply chain, it will vary in terms of the kind of items you're looking at. Where, what kind of items do you find the biggest challenge with? And I assume that then you're going to give your client, I know, a heads up that this could sort of slow things in terms of getting prepared, and that will obviously drive getting contracts and everything in place so you can move on things as quickly as possible. But what kind of items do you see as the what sets off alarm bells in your head when you see there's a request for them?
Um, when the client requests a specialty tube, let's say like a CPT, sodium heparin tube, or maybe like a Strec tube or a Smart tube, any of those specialty tubes that aren't what we regularly see, like a K2DTA or a serum tube, then those ring off for us to say, like, hey, we better look into this and see what's the timelines on these, and I would say. Another item that we've ran into here and there is just, every study uses a lot of cryo vials, so we just want to
Mhm.
make sure that we're fully stocked in those all the time, and especially now that we use barcoded cryo vials and those aren't always available. So we tend to stock up on something like that pretty often. But the main thing is, like I mentioned, specialty tubes.
Sure.
And so you have also complementary services like sample storage, sample logging. And what do you do with that?
Yeah, we really love to package those services. Obviously, anytime we can get the bioanalysis, that's our main goal. But if even if we don't, we have the opportunity to bring those samples. Once they've been out at the clinic and they've collected those samples, they may be going to one lab, they may be going to 5 labs or 6 labs. We can bring those back in house, sort them, and depot them out to where they're needed. We can biorepository the samples and hang on to them. And again, in that through that whole process, we have that very close one-on-one relationship where we're keeping you abreast of all of your where all your samples are, what's going on, answering queries, and just closing those loops to make sure your samples are getting where they need to be.
Terrific. Nice.
So, in terms of, we mentioned the international. What's your approach for spec or international based trials, or say specialist trials, where there's it's like I suppose more like unusual matrices or things like that. What how does that change how you do things? Let's start with the international piece, I suppose, first.
For our supply chain, for supply wise, we do use what we call a CE marked items. Those are items marked especially over for Europe. Otherwise, uh, regarding shipping supply kits into certain countries, we work with a client. They usually have a third-party CRO that we work with. When they apply for licenses, that when they apply for the drug, that we ask them to apply for the clinical kits as well, and then we use marketing as our main. They're very knowledgeable and helpful as far as experience in shipping into many countries around the world.
When I touched on the odd matrix things, what kind of specialist studies have you supported from that kind of perspective?
Um, well, we've done a COVID trial in South America before, and they use different types of matrices on that.
Okay, so you would say that the kits that you send, especially the tubes or specialty tubes, depending upon the matrix that they're going, plasma, serum, and stuff like that, and you have all this pieces of information available to the clinical site as well as the client going forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, excellent. And what are the benefits of the new facility that we just moved into, a fantastic building and stuff like that? How is that helping us with the clinical sample kitting?
For one, I think it helps us in because our clinical sample kits team was at one point in a different facility, but then with us being in one centralized facility now, we can always collaborate with other departments as far as getting information and getting the information faster and more precise.
I assume that also helps. If you've got, say, additives that need to be, if we need stabilizers or things in tubes. I know that's been a service we provided in the past, where we'll get the bioanalytical teams will help with preparation of those tubes. I suppose being together helps all that piece too, because it really will help the flow of those supplies through the facility, etc.
Most definitely. It's been really great having everybody all in the same building. Like Tang mentioned, our clinical kits department used to be in a satellite facility. It was just down the road, but it was enough of a distance that it did make it difficult to collaborate sometimes. So when we built our new facility, it's purpose built, it's big and beautiful, and the CSK space is just huge. We have lots of storage space now, so we're able to kind of anticipate some of those market trends where we're seeing the plastics that are coming and going from back order and do a little bit of stockpiling on our own end. And then also, we have a lot more depth over here for collaborating with our other departments and then bringing all hands on deck. Should we get a big study that's, a little bit difficult for our small department to handle, we can pop people right in and get those things moving and keep everybody on time.
So timing, like for example, Beth, what would you say would be if someone came in, let's say tomorrow, and said, "Hey, I need a kit for next month." Is that something you can handle? What's the size and stuff like that? Give us a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, with a month we can do just about anything.
Excellent.
We've gone anywhere from a study that only needs 10 kits, but they're extremely complicated,
Yeah. Hmm.
or a study that needs 10,000 kits that are a little more normal. Um, we can turn things around very quickly. One of the things that we are very transparent about is what a realistic timeline is going to look like from day one. We will not take on a contract and hope that we can get things done on time. We will tell you exactly what it's going to look like, and then we're going to deliver on that. But in general, given a week or so, we can probably turn around a kit. Within a month, there's not a whole lot we can't do.
Terrific.
Yeah, we always provide realistic times to clients and not just say, "Hey, we can do this." We always make sure that we ask them up front everything they need, and then we give them real time about when we can get those kits out.
That's great.
So what do you think will help drive future success of your team?
I think one of the biggest things that we're going to add to the service coming up is going to be an online portal. Um, it'll be a space where our clients as well as our clinics can come in, see what kits they have available, keep track of where they're going, place orders. watch those samples come back in real time, and then place orders for those samples as well. So we're bringing everything under one umbrella. We've vetted several software platforms and have chosen a winner. So that's something that we're really looking forward to bring on. And then that gives us a lot more flexibility too with our communication with our clients. We really like that one-on-one concierge service, but it doesn't always work as well. When your client's clear on the other side of the world,
Sure.
you get
Right,
one
right.
email a day, so with this portal, they'll be able to go in and actually check on these things that are frequent questions. How many kits do I have left? How many kits have you sent out? Has this landed yet? Have these come back yet? And then they can put those orders in, and they're waiting there for us when we get in the morning, and we can hit the ground running. So it's a very exciting improvement that we're working on right now.
What do you think's your timeline for implementing that?
You would have to ask the
No, and
software
it's
vendor.
and it's like how long's a piece of string, but I was just like,
We are targeting spring of 2023.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it's coming along nicely. We've been working with the developers. It's a fantastic piece of software. So we're well into the thick of it.
Sure. Good.
No, so Beth, you're also, I just want to bring this up, you're also following all the guidances and FDA and stuff. So if somebody comes in and wants to see all these stuff, the kit stuff that you're producing is all of regulatory compliance, correct?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
The studies that we support are largely, under your GLP or GCP regulations. So that's something that we are always very aware of and on top of.
Terrific.
Is there anything I don't have it? And is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd maybe like to talk through?
I don't think so.
Well, this has been very, very exciting. I think this is fantastic. A lot of people don't realize the benefit of these types of kittings to their studies, and sometimes they don't even know that we have this ability. And when we mention, oh, by the way, do you need sample? Oh, yeah, you do that? That'd be great. Can you send it out to the clients and all this other stuff? So this is fantastic, Beth and Tang. I really appreciate you spending time with us and giving us this background.
I do have a bit more of an abstract question. Obviously, we just announced that we bought active biomarkers in France.
Oh yeah.
So, is there any can you see any benefit to your team of having then a facility in France? Is that's something we could take advantage of? And I obviously have no idea what the long term strategy is, but if you were thinking long term, where would you take CS clinical sample kitting? Is that something that gets you excited?
I can see that as far as kits go. When we ship, we do any studies over in France, or especially in France, or within Europe, that we have somebody there that can help us facilitate the kits to the sites, because sometimes kits get stuck within the customs, and we can't address that here in Kansas. But then somebody over there, they can just give them a quick call, and it's usually something as simple as filling out a paperwork in their local language. That's all it takes for them to release those kits or samples. And having somebody over there is a great asset.
Yeah, that ability to interact at the same time zone can be a big deal, definitely.
That would be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, very good points, and something that's hadn't even really occurred. I don't think to anybody until we actually went through with the acquisition. I also serve as our company's data protection officer, so my responsibility lies as well in making sure that all of the data that we collect, especially personal data, which is very important to clinical patients, is kept secure. I was actually able to meet with our liaison from our French company who handles their GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation in EU. And she's done great things even just in one meeting to help us kind of understand the landscape and where we need to be and how we need to make sure that all of those pieces of personal information are managed correctly and that it's held privately.
That's fantastic. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a really nice collaboration already.
it's a benefit I wouldn't necessarily have thought about until I
Yeah.
start talking to you now, and it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see where that's
It's been great. I've been really, really grateful to have that collaboration already.
So, is there anything else? Any more questions, John? I think I'm good for now, and I have to say, Beth and Tang, I really do appreciate your time, and thanks for talking to us today. But obviously, John, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's fantastic. I think this is a fantastic service. I think a lot of clients are going to be using it, and with the increase in some of the details of guidances for clinical studies, this type of service is going to be very beneficial to our clients. So thank you very much, Beth and Tang. This is very, very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, but one thing we didn't actually prime either of you about, but we've done it to everyone else who's been a guest on the podcast. We have what we call hot seat questions. Dominic would have been all over this if he'd actually been with us today. But we have a few questions that we ask people, none of which are really too taxing, but we're gonna have to run through it, both of you. First one on the list is, what's your favourite podcast episode?
There you go.
I could not possibly choose a favorite episode, but I greatly appreciate that we touch on the COVID piece so often. I tragically lost my dad to COVID last year. He was young and pretty healthy and died anyway. So COVID's a very, very difficult subject for me, but I really appreciate that as a company, we're kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of that topic and keeping those lines of communication open and still paying attention to what's going on because it's very much still there.
Thanks, I really appreciate that. Really
Thank you.
appreciate that feedback. Yes. Next question: favorite dish to make? Because I'm going to say Dominic's food obsessed, but really both of us are food obsessed, so this comes up a lot.
For me, it's soup. I love to make soup. I love all kinds of soup, and I never make the same soup twice. I love to experiment in the kitchen, and as much as I love to bake and kind of make dishes, I'm not very recipe driven. I really kind of like to just throw things together that I think will work and then play around with them. So, soup.
So in our house, it's like a constant battleground where I really like doing smooth soups, whereas my wife wants lumps and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So it's like I make something and it's always too smooth, and yeah, like
you just throw some croutons in there and it's all good.
Oh, I'm finding ways around it, definitely, but I always like that the refined, totally liquidized soup approach. What about you, Tang?
For me, my favorite dish to eat is it's called Vietnamese pho, and it's kind of like it's also a soup, but it's like a noodle soup. It's like a soup, with beef broth and meats and noodles, and I mean it's very popular in my culture from Vietnam.
Mhm.
So, I mean, when me and my wife make that, I mean we do it together, and it's a collaboration, and I mean I enjoy really making that, and especially eating it.
I love the fact that it's become much more of a thing over the last, 5, 10 years in terms of pho restaurants.
It has, and there's
popping
some
up all
over good
over
ones in our area here in Kansas City.
That's
Yeah,
right. Yes.
My daughter went for university, went to New Paltz in New York, and we stumbled across a really good restaurant there that if I get the chance, I would go there anytime. Yes. So next question is favorite adult beverage.
Beer.
Okay, any particular beer?
I like fruity beers, light drinkers, easy drinkers, lagers.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Tang?
For me, when I go out to restaurants, then it's usually the go-to is an old fashioned. But then when I'm at home with my friends, I mean I don't know why we're still doing shots at this age, but it's shots of Hennessy, and I mean that's always the go-to for some reason. Cognac, I suppose.
Gets the job done.
There you go. Yes. So, usually we do this podcast on a Thursday, Friday, which is why this is the final question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's always interesting to find out what people are up to. What are your weekend plans? And so we can look at the coming weekend, I suppose, makes most sense on that.
Oh, I have a very exciting weekend coming up. I'm getting ready to sell my house, and I'm going to go
Oh,
down and clean.
Oh,
clean.
joy.
Oh my
Yay.
God.
My daughter left for college last year, and then this year I decided to buy a condo where she's going to school. So she's living out there. My son's away at college. I've moved in with a partner, so my house is ready to be sold, and I just need to clean it.
How about you, Tang?
Yeah, it is a Monday. So, I mean, I haven't thought about the weekend so much, but typically on the weekends, I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I know there is a birthday party coming up for one of our friends that has a son around her age. So, I think that's it. The rest of the time is usually we try to find out what there's to do here in Kansas City and there's any kids activities. So that's pretty much how our weekend usually goes.
And John, aren't you moving soon?
Yes, I'm moving to New Jersey at the end of October. I'll still be available with everybody here, but I'm moving back to my family, and it's wonderful. I'm right by
That's so
the ocean.
exciting.
Oh, it's wonderful, more than you can tell.
So happy for you, John.
So make our podcast even more fascinating when we talk about the geography of where everyone's scattered to.
Oh, you'll be hearing about the ocean and how nice it is and stuff like that, and how crazy New Jersey is. No problem.
Yeah, so for me, we're actually this afternoon. My wife's mother and brother are flying in from the UK, so we have 3 weeks of trying to show them the sights of New York Finger Lakes, and at various times our kids will drop in, and yeah, it should be a really nice time. So that's going to basically override everything for the next 3 weeks. That's the main focus for us.
Well, that's exciting. Good time of the year with the
Yeah.
color change and everything.
This time, so we're in the upstate New York. We do really well with the fall colours, and we got a lot of wineries around us, so it is actually a really nice. If I was ever saying to someone when to come and visit here, I would probably recommend October time, because it's almost the perfect time to be here. So
Sounds
yes, it should be really good.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I don't know if we have anything else. That was the hot list of questions. So thank you very much for joining us today. It's always really nice to talk about the bits of the business that I'm less familiar with, because it does sort of trigger things in your mind about, oh, I didn't know that. That's great for us to be talking to customers about, and hopefully really showing what KCAS as a company can do. John, do you have anything more to add?
No, I think this is fantastic. Beth and Tang, thank you very much. I think this is a wonderful introduction to the service, and I'm pretty sure clients will be using the service religiously as we move forward there. So this is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.